introduce yourself, please.
So I'm Andrew Ward, an arable farmer from Lincolnshire.
And Andy, can you just tell us a little bit about your farming enterprise?
So we're farming 1,600 acres altogether, or 650 hectares, but we've just this last year had one of the contract farms actually go full-time into SFI. So we've established that SFI, but there won't be any further work much on that apart from some topping. So our actually working area now is down to about 1,150 acres.
And just come back to SFI, Andy. What was the thinking about going into the SFI? What drove the decision?
The farm that's gone wholesale into SFI is one of our contract farms, so I didn't have any decision or any say in that decision. But our own farm, we have actually got two different agreements running where we've got flower margins in, we've got hedgerow management in, we've also doing the maintenance plans, the IPM plans, and things to do with the farm that really benefit it. We have got one field of legume mix, but that's all. So we've gone into it for, I feel, for the right things and the right reasons, not the wrong reasons.
And how do you feel about the DEFRA announcement to postpone the SFI, Andrew?
I think that really was only a matter of time, because I know there are some farmers that have put their whole farm into it, and the pot is only so deep. And really, when you look at the amount of money that there is in DEFRA and the £5 billion that there is that the DEFRA have given to over 2 years, then there is only so much available, and it was only a matter of time before it was stopped. It will come back, I think, but I think it will be vastly different to what we're seeing at the minute.
Now, it's very dry here and nice and warm, I have to say, at the cereal site this morning. Just out of interest, what challenges have you had this season, Andrew, on the farm?
I think the biggest challenge we've got at the minute, you can see glorious sunshine above. The biggest challenge is the weather. We seem to have that really every year, and it's really lack of rainfall. We had a difficult autumn with the rain that we had at the time when we were trying to get all the crops in the ground. We managed to get, for the first time for a long while, all our crops drilled that we planned to drill before the end of November. So that was good for us, and that was including land after sugar beet. But then after Christmas, the spring crops went in superb, probably the best I've seen them for a long while. But then since then now, we are just desperate for rain. And the crops are growing, but I think we've now got to the stage, we're now very end of April, and I think we're at now the yield limiting factor where we will still start to see some effects from the lack of moisture.
Yeah. And have you got any rain forecast, Andrew?
I saw the forecast last night. There's nothing for the next 2 weeks, which on this type of soil as well, on this light land, is really fatal.
And is there anything you think you can do, Andrew, to help crops through this period?
I mean, we're very careful and very mindful of not over applying plant protection products. The crop is already under stress, so scorching it anymore, whether it's with fertiliser or whether it's with some agrochemicals, is the last thing we want to do, because that will affect the yield as much as the lack of the moisture.
And just out of interest, Andrew, how important are shows like this?
I think these sorts of shows really do bring people together. We have a lot of issues in farming at the moment, and it's not just walking around looking at the fantastic plots that we've got here and everything there is to see. There's going to be 400 exhibitors here on the 11th and 12th of June, and seeing what they have on offer is absolutely fantastic. But it's absolutely the networking side. It's actually sharing the wins and the losses and sharing everything that you do in farming, because everybody wants a lot of help at the minute. There's a lot of mental stress out there. There's a lot of things happening to farmers and to the industry that really we can only put right ourselves by sharing it and by talking it through with like-minded people.
And is there anything particular that you would like to see at cereals over those 2 days, Andrew?
I don't think so. I think we've got to be very careful, in my view, on this net zero thing that everybody's talking about. And it's great that we've got plots here, we've got crops here that are going to be treated, they're going to be fed right up to the hilt to get the maximum potential. We have had a 7-year no-till and direct drilling trial running down at the main farm, and after 7 years we've ditched it, because we found out, and I thought this right from the start, that when we go down that route on our heavy soils, that all we're doing is losing yield, which loses us money, which in turn loses the nation food and means more imports. So I think we have to be very careful about this net zero and start to look at the wider aspects of it, such as the Environment Agency and such as water management, river maintenance, and all the things that we're doing or that isn't happening that's affecting the food supply and affecting the environment.
So do you feel that net zero is perhaps unachievable?
It's certainly unachievable on this farm because we had a carbon audit 3 or 4 years ago, and bearing in mind we have 8-metre flower margins around every field, we have lots of trees dotted about, we get good yields as well, we target all the inputs properly, we don't just throw them on without assessing it, doing tests in the soil for nitrogen and things like that. And for us, we were way off being carbon neutral. So for us, I don't know how we're going to get there, and as a nation it does worry me when everybody keeps pushing about being carbon neutral. And I know some fields, some farms you can do it. On light land you can maybe get there a lot better than you can on heavy land, where heavy land, you need, in my view, and what I've found, you need to do the deep cultivations, and you need to do the work to get the water away.
And do you think, Andrew, the sort of focus on food production is being lost with all the changes we've seen?
There's absolutely no doubt that food production's been lost, and I think when you start to look at the current narrative of the government, all they're doing at the moment is trying to make life difficult for farmers, and all they want to do is support everything but farmers. And everything they're doing really just will mean that we have to import more food from abroad. And we need to remember that the UK has some of the highest welfare and production standards in the world. And you only have to look at sugar, for instance. Sugar that comes from Australia is grown with 23 products that I am not allowed to use in growing the field of sugar beet across that road. And that is a prime example. So I think we have to be very careful, and the government need to really realise what they're doing, and how the imported food will actually be more than the homegrown food if we're not careful, and we can't let that happen.
You spoke about your cultivation and direct drilling trial, Andrew. What's your cultivation practice now after the if you like, the failure of that 7-year trial?
So all the time for about the last probably 20 years, we stopped ploughing in 2004, and then since then we've been down a minimum tillage Simba-based system, and as we know, Simba aren't here anymore, but we are still using their machinery. And it just proves how well built it was, and we maintain it and look after it to keep it running. So what we're doing is we put a tine through the ground straight after harvest. We mix the straw up. We don't bale anything if we can help it, because that's very good, valuable organic matter. So we mix the straw with the soil, and then we leave the ground untouched for about 2 months, and then we let the weather work the rest of it. So for us on our heavy clay soils, the constant wetting and drying actually gets this soil to break down. So all we'll do after we've been through with the Simba Solo is we go through with the Simba free flow drill and just drill it. And the fact that there's a lot of soil movement going on in that drill puts the seed in a good condition. We get good establishment percentage, and the water then gets away because the soil's been loosened. And we are as well now just coming back to moulling. We've had all the dikes done out over the last 3 or 4 years, and I bought a twin leg mould plough only last year, and so we are now mould draining all the fields going around all the heavy land, and I must admit it really has paid off this last year in the winter when we had a lot of rain.
You're saying it's paid off this year, Andrew. What particular benefits have you seen?
Well, in the past we've had ponding of water on headlands, and we've seen generally where the crops are lacking in the oxygen because you can see they're waterlogged. And all the fields that we've done with the mole drainer, we haven't had any waterlogging. We had a lot of rain in the October, in the sort of September, October, November period, and so for us that really has worked, and I know it will help and benefit the crops.
Now, I know, Andrew, you're keen to test things on your own farm. You mentioned your drilling and trial. Is there anything else you're looking at this season or next season to trial on the farm?
I don't think there is at the minute. We're always looking at nitrogen trials. We did a big nitrogen trial about 2 years ago, looking at how the NMIN soil tests work with us in the soil, and whether that's beneficial on inputs, and whether we can actually cut back on the amount of nitrogen. And we do follow those sort of things. So we're all the time checking what we're doing and checking that we're right. But at the minute, I can't feel that we're doing anything or we're going to be doing anything. The only crop that we are growing, we need to mention, are the Hericut baked beans. So we've been on those now for 2 years. The first year we grew a crop and only on 12 acres, and it worked fantastic. And then last year it didn't work very well at all because of the wet weather. But what we need to remember is think about, again, we're talking about food, we're talking about imports. and we need to remember that the baked beans that most people grow, in a average every day, we're using 2 million tins of baked beans every day of the year. Now that's a phenomenal amount, and when you start to look at the amount of beans where they come from, these beans are coming from China, Canada, Ethiopia and America. Nothing is produced in the UK apart from a very, very small amount. So what we're doing, we're growing the first British variety, not a foreign variety grown in Britain that some people have done. We're growing a British variety on our own farm here, and so we're trying to get British baked beans more into the food chain and more into the system. And we're also growing 2 varieties for cooking as well that will go into stews and casseroles and things like that. So a big trial this is really for the future of baked beans.
And which varieties are you growing, Andrew?
So the variety we're growing to make baked beans is a variety called Capulet. Then we're growing the other 2 varieties are Godiva and Olivia. And Olivia is the black bean, but those last 2, Godiva and Olivia, are the ones that will go into making cooking into stews.
And from an agronomy point of view, Andrew, what have you learnt about growing? You said last year was a bit of a poor season. What agronomy lessons have you learnt?
I think the main thing we've learnt with those beans is soil type. This year we've got one field just literally behind us that we're going to be growing, and we're going to be planting those on May the 10th. And I think its soil type needs to be right. It's really crucial, and we put them on some quite difficult soils this year, and it would have worked in a normal dry year or a normal year. But when we had the volume of rain we had last spring, don't forget nobody drilled any spring crops while virtually the beginning of May last year. And so I think we need to be looking at the right soil type. And so all these beans only have a 100-day growing window. So from planting the crop to harvesting, it's 100 days. You can't use glyphosate as a desiccant, so that's out. So we have to try and get the harvest date early enough to make sure that if there are any weeds in the crop, we can combine them on days like today when it's warm and sunny, and the combine will go through those weeds with the beans. But the problem we've got with these beans is if we're not careful, that they can grow low to the ground and low to the soil. So we're putting a companion crop of black oats with these beans to keep them standing. They all compete with each other for light and for nutrients. So the beans will wrap themselves around the oats and they'll help keep them standing. And then also what that does is at harvest time, it gives more volume to go through the combine and it feeds the combine. So it's a new crop, but there's lots to learn.
And you talked about the low to the ground. Is there any problems with harvesting the crop?
We have had a McDon header. We got a McDon header to go on the front of the combine, and obviously those headers go really low to the ground. You can alter the pitch of them and everything. And for us, they really are an essential part of this sort of growing these Capulet beans.
And will you be showing visitors to cereals the bean plots?
There will be some bean plots around, but the problem we've got is the field that we're having it is just across the road, other side of the car park field behind us. So it's not actually nearby here, but if anybody wants to see them, then yes, I'll happily, more than likely, take them and show them.
Or they can watch one of your Wardy's waffles.
Watch the Wardy's waffle and you'll see everything, warts and all.
Now, just a final question, Angela. We spoke about this year, the problems we've had this year with the dry weather. Just looking longer term, what do you think are the bigger long-term challenges for UK farming?
I think it's definitely government support at the minute, and we need to be really careful here because at the moment, yes, we have a Labour government, and the Labour government are doing everything they can to decimate the industry. But some of the things that we are suffering now was started with the previous government, and I don't feel we've had the right support from the government for a long while. And when you look at the returns we're getting from farming, I've just changed two old 14 and 15-year-old tractors for one 4-year-old tractor. That's the only way I could afford to change it, was to swap 2 for 1. But that's not right in today's age when we're feeding people, and our returns from the crops we're selling are the same as they were 20 years ago. Yeah, all the input costs have risen, as we all know. The costs have gone up hugely. So I think we need the government to actually make sure that they're supporting us in the right way, and we need to make sure that everything they're doing and everything they're saying they're going to do is for the right reasons. Think about home, think about what we're doing here, because at the moment they're sending £550 million to foreign farmers abroad to support other farming communities. Well, let's start with at home first, and if there's any money left, then go abroad.
And is there anything specific you would like to see the government do, whether it be reinstate SFI, whether it be more, a revised sort of BPS program? What would you like to see?
Yeah, I think one area of very topical at the minute is all the budget proposals that they announced at the end of October, and I think one area is the inheritance tax and business property relief and agricultural property relief. They really need to look at that, because you cannot just bring something in like that overnight and expect everybody to work with it. They say you plan forward and plan ahead. Well, everybody did plan, because the advice before the end of October on the budget was to keep it and hand it down to your next generation. But it's not just farmers. No business should be paying inheritance tax, doesn't matter what it is. And so I think it's that they really need to look at. And if they're not going to change it, there needs to be an amnesty against older farmers who aren't going to make the 7-year gifting rule, and farmers who are poorly. They really, really need to look at that, because at the moment they're not very compassionate at all, the government, and thinking about what the consequences of what they're doing.
Final question, what's the best thing about being a farmer?
Best thing about being a farmer is talking to you guys, being out in weather like this, and just being out in the countryside and being my own boss. That's the best thing.
So not shooting, skiing?
No, not shooting and skiing and all that, no.
All right, Andrew, I think we've run out of time.
I'll tell you one last thing is the best thing being a farmer. Going to watch Lincoln City play at Ipswich and beat them.